Story 1. Professional incompetence exists at all levels, from cashiers at McDonald's to nuclear scientists. The difference is how an organization handles and mitigates failure. Story 2. Many people experience a lack of friends as they get older. After graduating college, especially if you move to a new city for a job, it can be difficult to maintain friendships or make new ones while working every day. For some people, their spouse is their only close companion, and unmarried people often have few or no friends. Story 3. People who do not wash their hands after using the restroom. Story 4. Alcoholism. There are many more functional alcoholics or people in recovery than most people would guess. Story 5. Miscarriage affects many people. The Mayo Clinic reports that up to 20% of known pregnancies end in miscarriage. This is heartbreaking when a pregnancy is wanted and can be difficult even when it is not. In addition to that 20%, many people miscarry before they learn they are pregnant. Although not distressing in the same way as a known miscarriage, this can be upsetting because it may create a perceived inability to become pregnant. Story 6. Credit card debt. 45% of Americans carry a credit card balance from one month to the next. Story 7. A growing number of people are being left behind as services go digital. They come to the library where I volunteer for help. Many do not have email addresses, and most who do rely on the computer to remember their passwords. A significant number do not even have mobile phones. Story 8. Picking noses. Scratching backsides. Yes, most people's fingers do horrible things. Not me, though. Shame on all of you. Story 9. Low self-esteem leads people to avoid inviting, including, or initiating activities because they fear rejection or worry others will find them annoying. Often those who are excluded then feel rejected. Many people think they are more annoying or less liked than they actually are. Story 10. Many people feel ashamed of the things they enjoy. Professional wrestling, tabletop games, and other types of media such as anime and reality television. They are much more insecure about others catching a glimpse of their true selves than they realize. Story 11. Imposter syndrome. No one knows exactly what they are doing. We are all winging it. Most of us hope that asking questions and being kind will get us there. Story 12. Agreement with 4 statements is also known as the Barnum effect. It explains how horoscopes and fortune tellers influence you. Most people highly agree with each of the following statements. You have a great need for other people to like and admire you. You have a tendency to be critical of yourself. You have a great deal of unused capacity which you have not turned to your advantage. While you have some personality weaknesses, you are generally able to compensate for them. Your sexual adjustment has presented problems for you. Disciplined and self-controlled outside, you tend to be worrisome and insecure inside. At times you have serious doubts as to whether you have made the right decision or done the right thing. You prefer a certain amount of change and variety and become dissatisfied when hemmed in by restrictions and limitations. You pride yourself on being an independent thinker and do not accept others' statements without satisfactory proof. You have found it unwise to be too frank in revealing yourself to others. At times you are extroverted, affable, and sociable, while at other times you are introverted, wary, and reserved. Some of your aspirations tend to be pretty unrealistic. Security is one of your major goals in life. Story 13. There are far more people with kinky interests than you think. Seriously, most people have no idea. Story 14. Hoarding. People see the television show and think those are isolated incidents. But ask your local fire and emergency medical services providers and watch the horror creep across their faces. I have been in houses where you could not actually touch the floor. You walked on top of the debris. Houses where the door they use is the only door or window in the entire residence that opens. Houses where we had to station firefighters every couple of feet along the path through the mess, load the patient onto a mega-mover, a heavy-duty sheet with grab handles on the sides, and pass her person to person out the door. It is much more prevalent than you can imagine. Story 15. Grown people who fail to look anything up on their own or to call ahead to see if a place is open. The number of times I have been screamed at already this week for, "Why were you closed on Monday? Ma'am or sir, It is a federal or national holiday that has been observed longer than you and I have been alive. We posted signs stating this on every entrance and exit door on Friday morning. They were still up on Tuesday when we returned to work. Screaming at a random person because you were either willfully ignorant or did not call ahead, and then did not read the signs plastered all over, just makes you look unhinged. You also made a trip today for nothing because the item you were looking for has not arrived. If you had called ahead, you would not have wasted your time, energy, and gas. Story 16. Label, decide, cobweb, political, complete, rustic, advise, reply, ancient, school. Story 17. Train derailments are common. When the wreck in East Palestine happened, many people acted as if it were unprecedented. I work in an industry heavily affected by rail, and we experience derailments at least a few times a month. Story 18. After I joined Alcoholics Anonymous and began getting sober, I realized how many people there are in recovery from drugs or alcohol. I often meet people in recovery unexpectedly when I tell others I am sober. We are everywhere. Story 19. Maladaptive daydreaming often follows childhood trauma. Some children survive horrific experiences by detaching from reality and creating intricate fantasies to escape into. These fantasies can become so detailed and vivid that they become a person's primary reality. It can be hard to let go of this coping strategy in adulthood because the inner world feels more real and safer than the outside world. People can lose entire days to maladaptive daydreaming. It affects sleep because the mind cannot be shut off, strains friendships because people avoid communicating with others, and causes mental fog. At its worst, people may not eat properly or at all and may neglect personal hygiene and their surroundings. Maladaptive daydreaming is not like normal daydreaming. It can ruin a life and interfere with everything a person does. I live with maladaptive daydreaming and almost ruined my life because of it. I know others with similar experiences. On the plus side, maladaptive daydreaming can lead to remarkable creativity if you learn to control it rather than let it control you. Story 20. Sleep apnea and other sleep disorders delayed my diagnosis for 3 years because my symptoms were dismissed as depression. Doctors assumed I had depression because I had none of the usual sleep apnea risk factors and a prior history of depression, even though I insisted this felt different from previous episodes. I eventually started believing them. Then I saw a new psychiatrist and told her I was having a depressive episode. She reviewed my symptoms and found that either I did not have the symptoms she asked about or they were direct consequences of chronic tiredness. For example, I had not so much lost interest in activities as been too tired to do anything. She said it sounded more like a sleep disorder than depression and referred me to a sleep laboratory. She told me she refers many patients to sleep laboratories, and a colleague who was a psychiatry resident said he frequently diagnosed sleep apnea. Sleep disorders can mimic or worsen the symptoms of mental illness, so psychiatrists may be the ones to recognize when someone is not depressed. Story 21. Many people are unaware of the current activism trending on social media. A big example is the Starbucks and McDonald's boycott. Everyone online may be convinced it is a huge boycott, yet most people in the real world do not know anything about it. Not everyone is online all the time, and just because you know about something does not mean others do if they are not in the same online circle. Story 22. Stupidity and apathy. So many people you encounter in your day-to-day life are either idiots or just don't care. The kid at the drive-thru you thought was a dick doesn't care. The employee who made you add signs and rules like, don't shit in the company shower doesn't care. Story 23. We are living paycheck to paycheck and cannot believe how expensive groceries are. Story 24. Chin hairs on women are common. I am a dental hygienist and I see them in 90 to 95% of my female patients. I sometimes wonder how many women feel self-conscious about them. I want to assure you that it is normal, and none of us judge you or find these hairs interesting. The same goes for many other facial features people worry about at the dentist. We may notice them, but they are not nearly as interesting as the fuzzy biofilm on your second molars. Story 25. Many people know there is a lot of propaganda, but few understand how pervasive it is. Too many believe they are too smart to fall for it. Story 26. Many suicides are reported as natural causes or similar. Overdoses or misuse of prescription medications are rarely recorded as suicides unless a note is left. Some car accidents, drownings, and accidents at home are intentional, but many are classified as accidents. Shootings and hangings are difficult to conceal, yet when intent is not clear, deaths are often recorded as something else. Story 27. Abnormal levels of dissociation are common. Many people go their entire lives without realizing it is not how most people function. Understanding how and why it differs requires a lot of research, which can sometimes make things worse. If you do not want to find out, I understand. It is not life-threatening or anything extreme. It simply explains many of the questions we have about what might be wrong. Story 28. There are many good people. Seriously, I think over 90% of us are at least decent. People look at politicians, celebrities, and other very public figures and assume everyone is like that. For some reason, we have not figured out how to run governments or businesses without the worst people rising to the top. But I still believe most of us are good. Even a significant portion of Trump voters probably are not motivated by nefarious reasons. They are simply uninformed or misinformed and have accepted falsehoods. Cynicism is a major problem because it halts progress. To improve anything, you need to believe it can be improved. Idealism alone will not solve problems. You must act on it and apply it correctly. Cynicism cannot solve anything. Story 29. Borderline personality disorder often takes a long time to be diagnosed and is frequently misdiagnosed. People who are severely unwell may not seek treatment. Understanding of the disorder is still emerging. Story 30. Celebrities being related to other celebrities, movie stars being the children of other movie stars, and general inside connections are major factors in who gets to be on screen. If you are wondering how the semi-conscious wooden plank Dakota Johnson became the lead of the film Madam Web, she is the daughter of Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith. Story 31. People lie even when they have no reason to. Many people lie for attention. It is how urban legends and myths spread. My friend said a snake began starving itself and would lie beside her. She claimed the snake was making room so it could eat her. She also said she worked at a hospital where someone named their daughter Lua, pronounced Ledasha. In both cases, the friend lied. People become very angry when you gently tell them a story is not true. Note: fixed a typo. Note 2. There is always one or two replies claiming they knew Lue. Final note: I am a journalist. I have spent 10 years researching these urban legend names. I offered $100 to anyone who could provide proof. No one in 10 years has claimed the money. Story 32. Sleep-related impairment. If a surgeon has 6 hours of sleep or less, they have a 170% higher chance of making a fatal error. Letting children start school closer to 9 than to 7 resulted in a 70% decrease in road accidents. There is a 24% increase in cardiovascular issues from just 1 hour less sleep during daylight saving time, and the same percentage decrease when we get an extra hour of sleep. This is alarming. I have not had a good week of sleep since I was 12. I am 31 and sometimes worry I will develop dementia. Story 33. Miscarriages are common. It is painful when it happens to you, and not many people talk about it. Most of the time it is just bad luck and does not mean that something is wrong with you or that you did something wrong. It is concerning if it happens several times in a row. Story 34. The diamond industry is a sham. A handful of companies control a near monopoly and artificially inflate prices by buying up raw diamonds and selling only a small fraction to the public. Story 35. How prevalent is cocaine? At least where I live, you go to a bar or club and it is everywhere. Story 36. Autism in women is receiving more attention. TikTok and similar platforms are making it feel ubiquitous in a way that can be unhelpful and possibly dangerous, but this is a reaction to growing up in a world where people assumed only boys could be on the spectrum. All my teachers knew something was wrong with me but did not know what specifically, and I had a very difficult time as a teenager. As an adult, I have sought a diagnosis, but because I have had so many shifting and conflicting mental health diagnoses, obtaining a formal diagnosis has been difficult. I will probably never get an official diagnosis, But if clinicians could see how some of the older people in my family behaved, there would be no question. Story 37. Australian female sex worker here. Sexually transmitted infections. Among the general population, sex workers in Australia actually have lower rates than the average person. Small and large penises. Most straight men's ideas of what constitutes small, average, and large are seriously warped by pornography. Third, nipples. I always kiss them for good luck when I come across them. Phimosis, also known as inability or difficulty retracting the foreskin. It should be less common among my clients. If you can afford to spend 500 Australian dollars or more on a sex worker, you can afford the medical treatment to fix it. It might even be free because it is a legitimate health issue. People who claim to be ultra-religious but who also regularly see sex workers and who drink or take drugs and so on. It is common enough that sex workers often schedule their holidays around religious observances, such as Ramadan, because brothels and phone-based services become noticeably quieter. Story 38. Serious injuries and deaths at the utilities company. I am not saying it was a bloodbath or trying to be critical. Accidents happen. But when I worked for the local utilities company, there were more serious accidents and deaths among line, wire, and gas workers than you hear about in the news. You might hear about 1 or 2 a year when there were closer to 5. Story 39. I am serious. Hairy nipples in women. My doctor was shocked and convinced my hormones were off. They were not. It was simply my genetics. Normally I would pluck, as many women do, but I was not well at the time. He had clearly never seen the breasts of a woman who had not plucked. Story 40. It is hard for Generation Z to comprehend, but in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s your grandparents and parents were much more sexually active and adventurous than you are. Story 41. Incest. Reading about the offenses that put people in prison for criminal sexual conduct is sickening. They are just the ones who were caught and prosecuted. Story 42. Undiagnosed autism in adults and children. A diagnosis is not a bad thing. If you suspect your child has autism, have them evaluated so they can receive interventions. Early intervention is best. Story 43. Not eating enough fiber is common. I once read that over 90% of North Americans do not consume sufficient fiber, and I think about this all the time. Story 44. Cocaine is America's cup of coffee. Movie quote, but it's true. Story 45. Disability is often invisible. 25% of the population will become disabled at some point, and many of those people have not yet reached middle age. Story 46. Neurodivergence, especially autism spectrum disorder. For a long time, most studies focused on low-functioning individuals, with prevalence estimates of about 1 in 100. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder affects about 5% of the population. I work in schools, and my cousin is on the lower end of high-functioning autism, so I have some idea what to look for. My estimate is that children on the neurodivergent spectrum are closer to 1 in 11. Most of them learn to mask their traits. Story 47. Young people are suddenly dying. This has always happened. We just never had 24-hour algorithm-driven news pushed to us. Story 48. I have an Android in a world filled with iPhones. I will not be shamed for my texts being green. I like my phone. Story 49. Cocaine. Getting older meant realizing how many people use cocaine and that many adults I knew as a child were probably using it. Story 50. Abusive families are not like most people imagine. Story 51. People who use drugs. Actual adults with good jobs who are parents and so on. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.